11:14 p.m., the skies above Kramatorsk split open. 3 Russian Iskander missiles launched from the Torske Valley, fast, precise, unstoppable. Inside a fortified Ukrainian command post, Colonel Serhiy Koval watched his radar screens vanish one by one as Falcon node uplinks burned out under jamming. 64 seconds later, the first warhead struck. Concrete shattered. Communications died. The ridge itself collapsed into fire. But inside the crater, voices still answered. Engineers fought the heat. Medics dragged survivors through twisted steel. The enemy had targeted silence, yet Ukraine's signal refused to fade. When dawn came, the command bunker was gone. But its transmission still pulsed across the network. We are alive. The line holds. This is the true reconstruction of that night when precision met defiance, and the front line rewrote itself in flame. Stay through the end, because what happened beneath Kramatorsk will change how you see modern warfare forever. The night over eastern Ukraine felt heavier than usual. Above Kramatorsk, low clouds moved in from the steppe, their undersides reflecting a dim red glow from scattered fires still burning miles away. Colonel Serhiy Koval stood in the narrow command shelter beneath Velika Hirka Ridge, his uniform collar unbuttoned, his face drawn and silent. For weeks, intercepted Russian traffic had hinted that Iskander-M ballistic launchers were being moved into the Torske Valley. Tonight, the intelligence reports no longer spoke in probabilities, they spoke in coordinates. At 22:48, the Falcon node uplink from the Polish border transmitted a burst of encrypted imagery thermal flashes near the tree line southwest of Lisna Line. The signature was unmistakable, the brief, hot bloom of solid fuel rockets being vertically aligned. NATO analysts flagged it within 30 seconds. Launch configuration 2 units active, the message read. There was no ambiguity left. The Iskanders were ready. Inside the bunker, the rhythmic clicking of servers and the constant hum of generators filled the silence. Koval's operations officer, Major Andriy Korolenko, checked the redundancy link with the Western command grid. Starlink interference reports were mounting, suggesting a localized jamming field somewhere east of Sloviansk. Without stable uplinks, the early warning data might never reach the front line in time. We'll get 10, maybe 12 minutes notice if they fire, Korolenko murmured, his voice almost drowned out by static. Koval said nothing. He knew 12 minutes was optimistic. Outside the fields around the Rivnyansky bypass were quiet but tense. Small reconnaissance drones from the Ukrainian Skylance squadron buzzed in the darkness, their infrared optics scanning for heat blooms. The operators had been awake for 20 hours, drinking thick coffee from metal mugs, their eyes fixed on green-tinted screens. One of them, a 19-year-old corporal named Dmytro, watched a faint glimmer of light appear on his feed. It was distant but steady, too consistent for random flare reflection. He tagged the coordinates and transmitted them up the chain. It was near Torske Valley again. By 23:10, Koval gathered his staff. "We've seen the pattern before," he said, pointing at the updated overlay on the wall display. 3 hot zones, triangular alignment, identical spacing to previous Iskander deployments in Luhansk sector. Each could launch a 9M 723 missile within minutes, carrying a 700-kilogram warhead capable of penetrating reinforced bunkers. "If they're fueling, we have 5 minutes before launch," he said quietly. The communications officer attempted another ping to the Falcon node relay. It failed twice, then connected on the 3rd attempt, bandwidth collapsing under strain. The incoming transmission was brief, garbled by packet loss, but clear enough to freeze everyone in place, confirmed. Torske Valley, Iskander ignition sequence detected, 3 units. The clock inside the bunker struck 23:14. Koval's eyes met Korolenko's. They both understood that no air defense system in the sector could intercept a ballistic missile at that altitude and speed. Across the command shelter, the lighting dimmed as the backup generator flickered. The men and women inside exchanged glances, the unspoken dread hanging thick in the stale air. Koval took a deep breath and adjusted the small Ukrainian flag pinned beside the situation map. "Transmit full evacuation order to grid sections Echo 3 and Echo 4, he said. His tone was calm, deliberate. "If we lose connection, execute manually." A faint tremor rippled through the floor as distant artillery fired somewhere along the Lisna line, not at them but close enough to feel in their bones. It was the sound of a front stretching thin, the prelude to something larger. Above ground, the horizon to the east began to pulse with intermittent flashes, each one lighting the clouds like heat lightning. They were not storms, they were engines igniting. Colonel Koval looked at the old wristwatch on his arm. It was 23:18. He whispered something no one else heard, a fragment of a soldier's prayer, learned years ago in Mykolaiv, then turned toward the operations table. On the monitors, 3 streaks of heat signatures erupted simultaneously from the valley floor. The sky above Torske flared bright for 1 second, then dimmed. The Iskanders were airborne. The countdown to impact had begun. At 23:19, only seconds after the heat plumes lit up near Torske Valley, Falconode's signal arrays in Poland and Lithuania began registering telemetry echoes, faint but consistent. The encrypted data passed through multiple NATO relays before reaching the Ukrainian command network. In the bunker below Velika Hirka Ridge, Colonel Serhiy Koval leaned over the glowing operations table as the latest packet streamed in. A young signals officer read the decoded line aloud. Trajectory lock confirmed. 3 launches. Predicted impact near Grid Echo 3. The bunker fell silent. This was the 3rd confirmed Iskander launch within 48 hours across the Donbas arc, but never this close to the command structure. The Russian launchers, likely positioned under camouflage nets near Torske, had waited for overcast conditions to minimize satellite shadow detection. The missiles now arced upward into the dense cloud layer, traveling at over Mach 6, guided by inertial systems immune to local jamming. Koval turned to Major Korolenko. "Cross-check with Skylance feed," he ordered. The drone feed flickered on-screen, blurred, disoriented, as if the sensors themselves felt fear. A faint glow traced across the night horizon, almost beautiful in its precision. The AI overlay painted 3 crimson arcs, predicting impact vectors toward Hromivka airstrip, the bunker's ridge itself, and a secondary depot 2 kilometers south. The colonel's voice remained measured. "They're aiming to decapitate coordination." The tactical map displayed live uplinks from neighboring units 128th, 93rd, and 92nd Brigades, all now under simultaneous electronic interference. The Russian jamming signal appeared to originate from a modified Lear 3 system concealed somewhere near the Lisna line. Its reach was impressive, sweeping wide enough to disrupt local drone telemetry and shortwave emergency channels. In Warsaw, NATO analysts at the Falcon Node monitoring cell debated whether to transmit counter data. The dilemma: every additional transmission increased trace risk. Do we spoof coordinates or stay silent? One technician asked. If the spoof fails, it exposes the network. The supervising officer chose silence. Let them ride the inertia. Their optics will do the rest. It was a gamble that would shape the night's outcome. Meanwhile, inside the Kramatorsk bunker, the floor vibrated lightly. Someone's coffee cup tipped, spilling dark liquid across a map of the region. Koval barely noticed. He was studying a flickering radar line from the 47th Air Defense Regiment west of Sloviansk. Their sensors were attempting to capture the incoming objects, but each track disappeared midair. The Iskanders were descending too fast, their re-entry signatures breaking the radar horizon in under 15 seconds. "Notify Chernihiv Command, we've lost radar lock," Korolenko said. His subordinate hesitated. "Sir, comms with Chernihiv just dropped link timeout." For a brief moment, the bunker was left in total radio isolation. The constant digital hum died, replaced by the faint whine of backup cooling fans. The silence was deafening. Outside over Rivnyansky bypass, the Skylance drones continued to transmit fragmentary data. Their AI routines attempted predictive mapping, guessing the points of impact based on acceleration and bearing. Each simulation returned the same result: 1 warhead onto the airstrip, 1 on the ridge, and 1 on the depot. The margin of error was less than 200 meters. Koval stared at the projection. "They're coming for command, logistics, and fuel. Clean sweep." At 23:23, Falcon node transmitted one final advisory, estimated time to impact 64 seconds. The message reached Koval's terminal just before the uplink froze. He looked around the narrow shelter rows of monitors, paper maps pinned under mugs, a young sergeant still typing coordinates that would never reach anyone outside. For an instant, he thought about the families who had built the bunkers, the volunteers who delivered generators, the allies watching from distant screens. "Brace all sectors," he said, voice steady, "and record everything." The words carried through the shelter like the toll of a bell. Above them, 3 fiery arcs streaked through the clouds, invisible to the naked eye, but roaring toward the earth with mathematical certainty. The intelligence thread had reached its end, and now physics would speak louder than data. At 23:24, the encrypted launch order known as Perun 6 was confirmed through the Russian command net. Somewhere into the forests of the Torske Valley, 3 transport erector launchers rose from their camouflaged hollows. Hydraulic arms extended, angling the missile tubes toward the cloud cover. Frost vapor hissed from the fuel couplings as the final ignition codes were transmitted through a fiber-shielded cable line. Then, with a flash that momentarily turned the valley into daylight, the first Iskander-M leapt from its cradle. Seconds later, 2 more followed, synchronized with near-perfect timing. Satellite operators over the Baltic recorded the ignition sequence in real time. Each missile accelerated through the troposphere at over 6 times the speed of sound. From above, they appeared as thin silver lances piercing a field of cloud, shedding debris and condensation trails that vanished within seconds. The Iskanders were not built for stealth, they were built for certainty. In less than a minute, their internal inertial guidance systems recalibrated mid-flight, aided by optical seekers that compared ground patterns against preloaded imagery. It was one of the most sophisticated land attack sequences in the entire Russian arsenal. Inside the Kramatorsk bunker, Colonel Serhiy Koval felt the rumble before hearing it. The first vibration came from deep underground, a low resonant hum as shockwaves traveled through soil and concrete. On the operations table, the timestamp ticked down 0000 560000 47 00039. The bunker lights flickered. "They've cleared apogee." Major Korolenko muttered, eyes locked on the telemetry feed that still managed to relay a single trajectory line before freezing. "Deploy decoy transmitters," Koval ordered. The techs switched the signal frequency to broadcast a false emission 300 meters east of the ridge, hoping to lure the terminal's seeker off its mark. In theory, the Iskander's optical system could be fooled by a strong enough electromagnetic flare, but theory rarely survived real war. Within seconds, the decoy emitters overloaded, shorting out under their own thermal output. The bunker dimmed again, screens flashing red signal integrity lost. At that moment, Skylance Unit 7, still circling above Rivnyansky bypass, caught a glimpse of the missiles breaking cloud cover. The drone's onboard AI captured 3 luminous objects descending in a perfect V formation. Data streamed back for a few seconds before the jamming field severed the link. The operator never saw the impacts, only a bright surge of light, then static. In the valley below, a Ukrainian logistics truck swerved to a stop as the sky itself appeared to fold open. The first Iskander struck the Hromivka airstrip, detonating its warhead above ground in a precision airburst. The explosion flattened the runway and tore through several fuel reservoirs. The second missile, following its optical seeker, angled toward the ridge, where the command bunker sat beneath layers of reinforced concrete. For an instant, its onboard camera likely recognized the faint glow of the ventilation tower confirmation of target lock. It plunged down without hesitation. Koval had only enough time to shout, "Down!" The blast hit 2 seconds later. The earth convulsed, consoles toppled, dust poured from the ceiling vents like smoke. The sound was beyond comprehension, a pressure wave so violent it compressed the lungs before the ears registered anything. Monitors shattered, wires snapped free, sparking blue arcs across the control panels. Above ground, the third missile struck the southern depot, igniting stored ammunition. The detonation chain leapt across connected supply tunnels, erupting in rapid bursts that resembled thunder rolling through stone. The ridge shook again as secondary explosions roared to life. Within moments, the entire Echo 3 sector was engulfed in flame and dust, the horizon pulsing orange like a furnace. Inside what remained of the command shelter, the emergency lights flickered weakly, painting every face in ghostly red. Koval tasted concrete dust and iron. Somewhere to his left, Korolenko was shouting into a dead radio. Mainline down, backup offline, he yelled, though his words were nearly drowned by the echoes above. For 30 seconds, no one moved. Only the groaning of ruptured steel beams filled the silence. And then came the aftersound, deep, rolling resonance that lingered in the bones long after the blast itself had passed. 3 impacts, 3 fireballs. In that moment, time itself seemed to pause. The launch order Perun 6 had completed its mission. The command post near Kramatorsk was no longer a position on a map. It was a crater. The world returned as a roar of static and dust. The security feeds that hadn't been destroyed now played in fragments, disjointed black and white bursts of the ridge above. The first frame showed a wall of soil, lifting like a wave. The second frame was snowed with static. Then one camera positioned in the eastern tunnel caught a glimpse that would later circulate through every military briefing, the rolling shockwaves swallowing the mouth of the bunker as if the earth itself had inhaled. Inside, the blast registered first as pressure, a crushing weight that pushed the air from every lung. The reinforced walls groaned, bending inward by millimeters that felt like meters. Fluorescent tubes burst in sequence, showering sparks. Major Korolenko stumbled to the floor, blood at his temple. Colonel Serhiy Koval, half blind from the flash, crawled toward the emergency console. He pressed his hand to the display, its surface spider-cracked, but still alive, glowing faintly. "Status? Section Bravo," he asked. No one answered. The communications array had melted in the heat. The only sound came from water pipes, rupturing above hissing like snakes in the darkness. Somewhere deeper in the bunker, a soldier's voice shouted for a medic. The smell of burned insulation mixed with the sharp, metallic taste of dust. Koval forced himself upright. "Power cells," he yelled. 2 engineers responded, dragging a portable generator from the storage bay. When they started it, the engine coughed twice, then caught flooding the corridor with a flickering amber light. Through the haze, they could see what remained of the operations hall: overturned desks, twisted antennas, fragments of monitors hanging by cords. The tactical map that once displayed the entire Kramatorsk front was now half-burned, curling at the edges. Yet one data module still pulsed, a Falcon node relay node showing the final recorded telemetry. Koval stared at the coordinates. "They corrected in flight," he muttered. "Our decoy failed." The precision unsettled him more than the damage itself. Above ground, Skylance's final surviving drone transmitted 6 seconds of video before losing contact. The feed showed a crater 200 meters wide, glowing with molten rock and twisted rebar. Around its rim, fires spread through pine trees, sending black columns into the night. The ridge that had once hidden the Ukrainian HQ was gone, replaced by a bowl of flame. Even miles away, residents of Kramatorsk would later recall the windows rattling, car alarms wailing across the valley. At 23:31, the bunker's internal clock still ran. Koval recorded a short voice note into his handheld transmitter, an instinct born from years of procedure. HQ Echo 3 hit by 3 ballistic missiles. Structural integrity at 40%. Request confirmation of remaining units. He paused, then added quietly, "We are alive. Some of us." The message never left the bunker. The antenna above had been sheared away like paper. Major Korolenko reappeared, his face streaked with grime. "Fire spreading through Tunnel 4. We need to seal bulkheads." Koval nodded, coughing through the smoke. "Do it. Then check on the medics." His composure steadied the survivors around him. Soldiers moved with renewed discipline. "Wait now, sealing hatches dragging debris marking the wounded." The air grew thicker, hotter, carrying a constant low hum from the burning generators outside. Minutes passed in fractured time. Every heartbeat felt amplified, every sound too near. When the first outside gust entered through a cracked ventilation shaft, it carried the unmistakable scent of rain and burning fuel, a bitter mixture that told them the surface was open again. Koval climbed the short emergency ladder and looked upward through the warped grate. he saw only orange sky. That was when he realized the ridge was gone entirely. The command post no longer existed as a structure. It was a hollow, carved into the earth. For a moment, he thought of the soldiers who had built it with shovels and steel 2 winters before. He whispered, "You gave it shape, and now it's returned to dust." Behind him, someone murmured, "Orders." Serhiy Koval turned, his expression set. "We hold. We find survivors. Then we tell the world what precision really means." The fire reached the first ventilation shaft at 2336. The oxygen drawn through the ruptured ducts fed it like a living thing, spreading tongues of flame through every crack in the concrete. The surviving engineers fought with extinguishers until the canisters hissed empty. The heat was unbearable. Even the metal doors radiated like iron stoves. Colonel Serhiy Koval wrapped a bandage around his hand and dragged an unconscious radio operator clear of the debris. Dust clung to his uniform. Every breath came with a sting of burned insulation. Outside, the storm had begun. Rain mixed with soot hissing as it struck the glowing crater above the bunker. The first rescue detail from the 92nd Brigade arrived from the western approach, guided by the faint flashes of burning ammunition. Their armored truck stopped short of the ridge when the heat sensor spiked. Through binoculars, the lieutenant in charge could see no structure left to enter, only a pit and a field of smoking rebar. He switched to the short-range frequency. "Echo 3, this is Delta Team," he called. No response. The static hissed like wind through a tunnel. Inside, Major Andriy Korolenko worked to re-establish contact through a backup field terminal. The power surged twice, then stabilized, just long enough to bring up a partial signal. "Delta Team, we read you, faint," he shouted into the microphone. "We have wounded and trapped personnel. Access tunnel Alpha 2, still open." The words broke apart in static, but they reached the rescuers. The lieutenant outside grabbed his headset. "Copy that we're coming in." The entry path was treacherous. Chunks of hot concrete littered the slope, and the soil beneath was slick from rain and fuel. The rescuers moved in pairs, dragging cables cutting through twisted rebar with portable torches. They reached the main hatch 20 minutes later. Its blast door had warped inward, sealing most of the passage. One of the sappers, Corporal Leonid, placed a shaped charge along the edge and detonated it. The door cracked open with a metallic scream. A wave of smoke poured out, carrying the acrid scent of burned paint and plastic. Koval met them halfway down the tunnel. His face was pale, but composed eyes reflecting the flicker of the rescue lights. "Medics first," he ordered, "then water. We have trapped sections on both sides of the main corridor." The rescuers nodded and began hauling out the wounded soldiers, coughing black dust, one clutching a broken arm, another with half his uniform scorched. Each man carried the same expression, disbelief wrapped in exhaustion. By 0005, the first survivors emerged into open air. Rain fell harder, washing soot from their faces. The hillside still glowed beneath the surface embers, pulsing like veins of fire. Medics triaged under tarpaulins, their flashlights cutting cones of white through the steam. A drone from the Skylance Reserve Unit hovered overhead, transmitting the scene to command posts farther west. Its feed, raw, chaotic, illuminated by rain and firelight, would become one of the defining images of the Kramatorsk strike. Colonel Koval refused evacuation until every name on his roster had been checked. "They came for our nerve center," he said, standing amid the crater, his voice hoarse, "but they only hit concrete. The will still stands." Around him, the rescue crews continued their work, heads bowed against the rain. The comms officer reported a weak Falcon node signal returning from Poland, the first flicker of contact since the strike. "Sir, transmission link stable enough for message burst." Koval wiped the grime from his face and dictated, slowly choosing each word like a weapon. "Echo 3 command post, partially destroyed. Multiple casualties. Operation continuing. Ukraine still transmitting." He paused, then added, "The line holds." The operator pressed send. Across the fractured sky, the drone's blue indicator light blinked twice, confirming receipt. Somewhere far beyond the front, a satellite logged those words into the digital ledger of the war proof that even inside a crater, the signal of resistance still pulsed. In the hours after the rescue analysis began, even before the smoke cleared, the Ukrainian defense engineers gathered the fragments that remained intact enough to study shards of alloy from the Iskander's warhead casing, fragments of its optical seeker lens, and a melted circuit plate embedded in the concrete. Under the weak light of portable lamps, technicians cataloged each piece with gloved precision. What they found disturbed them. The missile's seeker head was not the standard optical unit used in earlier versions. This was an enhanced Iskander-M variant, believed to incorporate a multi-spectrum imaging module, incapable of cross-referencing terrain shadows, not just static landmarks. It meant the missile could recognize topography through cloud smoke or even basic electronic spoofing. In short, their decoys had been too simple. The false emitters designed to mimic radar and heat signatures had fooled early generation missiles before. But this time the Iskanders had ignored those decoys entirely, homing instead on shape and contrast patterns. Colonel Serhiy Koval listened quietly as the engineers explained. "They see the ground, not the noise," one said. Koval folded his arms. Then they saw us. He knew that precision like this meant more than luck. It meant real-time targeting updates. Later review of Falcon node logs confirmed that a Russian reconnaissance satellite, Cosmos 2571, had passed over Torske Valley 6 minutes before launch. Its synthetic aperture imaging likely refined the strike coordinates moments before ignition. The Russians had combined orbital data with optical seekers, merging space intelligence and tactical execution into a seamless kill chain. NATO observers, reviewing the telemetry in Warsaw, noted another revelation: the Iskanders had adjusted trajectory mid-flight after jamming interference. Using onboard optical correction, the missiles cross-checked each other's descent paths, forming a coordinated pattern that resembled swarm logic, a battlefield AI behavior, not previously confirmed in Russian short-range systems. This coordination allowed each warhead to self-assign a unique aim point within the same target area, maximizing destructive overlap while minimizing redundancy. "They're learning to think in formation," one analyst said grimly. For Ukrainian command, the implications were severe. Falcon node's network had held long enough to detect launch, but not to coordinate countermeasures in real time. Their system was designed for seconds, not milliseconds. The Russians had exploited that gap perfectly. By the time Ukrainian operators triggered decoy deployment, the Iskander's optical correction had already locked onto the bunker's unique contour, a triangle of concrete cuts distinct from the surrounding soil. The bunker, ironically engineered to blend into the terrain, had been too geometrically precise to disguise. In Kiev, the Military Research Directorate later issued a briefing titled "Adaptive Trajectory Warfare." The report concluded that optical guidance had surpassed traditional jamming, and that survival would depend on deception through chaos, not signal. Instead of trying to blind the missile, defenders would need to confuse its mind. Unpredictable terrain alterations, reflective camouflage holographic overlays that could scramble at the missile's shape recognition model. You cannot hide in a pattern, the report warned, because pattern itself is the target. Back at Kramatorsk, the remnants of the command ridge steamed under morning rain. Engineers laid out scorched circuit boards, their edges curling like leaves. One technician lifted a recovered guidance lens to the light, cracked but intact, and passed it to Koval. His little eye saw through everything we built, he said. The colonel turned it over in his hand. The glass caught the reflection of the fires still burning behind him. Then next time he replied, we make it see ghosts. By dawn, data from the strike had already been uploaded to NATO's secure cloud for pattern analysis. Within hours, simulation labs in Germany and the United States began feeding it into AI training clusters. Somewhere code was already rewriting itself, learning how to outthink the weapon that had torn open Kramatorsk. The war was becoming less about steel and more about algorithms battles measured not in kilometers, but in milliseconds. And in that invisible war of minds, Colonel Koval knew every survivor of Echo 3 had become part of the countercode. Morning came gray and silent. The fires had burned themselves to ash, leaving the ridge veiled in a low chemical mist. From what remained of the command post, only the reinforced floor and a section of the access tunnel still stood. Rescue crews moved methodically through the rubble, collecting helmets, tags, and fragments of notebooks, the human remains of a system that had once pulsed with coordination and life. Colonel Serhiy Koval sat beside a makeshift table fashioned from a broken steel door. His left hand trembled as he wrote by flashlight onto a damp notepad. The letter was brief: to the families of those at Echo 3, your sons and daughters stood the line when silence was all we had. They faced the weight of precision and answered it with duty. This ground is no longer command soil. It is memory. He signed only with his initials. At 0710, communication with higher command was restored. Orders arrived to relocate operations westward. Koval folded the letter, tucked it into his jacket, and stood. Around him, survivors looked to him for direction. He nodded once. "We rebuild," he said simply. Far above, a drone circled the smoking ridge, one last transmission flickering through the clouds. If you value clear cinematic battlefield analysis, subscribe for more stories where every detail remembers the cost of silence and survival.